If you don't follow these 9 steps to success, you will fail as a car salesman. Welcome in, everybody. This is The Road to the Sale, a complete guide and a 30-minute podcast to give you the ins and outs, your 9 steps to make you a successful car salesman. Welcome in. My name is Dan Levy. I'm your host. With me is the expert, the man in charge of this whole project, Dan Little Jr. Dan, welcome in.
Hey, thanks. I'm looking forward to going through all this with everybody.
23 years of experience in the automotive sales management and training industry. He does a lot of cool stuff, a lot of cool guides, and even actual training too. We'll give that information at the end of the video. But today we're doing a deep dive into the industry, what professionals call the road to the sale, which we are calling the 9 steps to be a successful salesperson in the automotive industry. All right, Dan, I'm excited for you to walk us through this entire thing. Shall we jump in?
Yeah, let's go ahead. We'll start right at the beginning.
All right, most people know that there is a process when they walk into a dealership. We all know we're walking in. It feels like sharks are swarming. We want to, if we're going to sell the car, we want those people to walk in. We want them to be in our hands. We want them to feel comfortable. We want them to do what they need to do. How many steps are we talking about here? And what is that initial step of somebody walking in and they're saying, "Hi, nice to meet you. I'm looking for a car," and you go to greet them? Give us step number 1.
So step number 1 is going to be the meet and greet. And for the customer, this process actually starts before they even walk into the dealership. As a salesperson, it's good to know that the customer's paying attention to your appearance. That's going to be number 1, and your approach is number 2. As you do go up and greet that customer, proper meet and greet is going to be a nice firm handshake, a welcome to the dealership. Make sure you clearly state your name and get their name so that you could address them by it the whole time. And do the best you can not to start off with the question of how could I help you. The worst part about how can I help you is it's going to draw a negative response right away because most customers are triggered to say just looking. Now that doesn't mean I don't have a workaround for the topic of just looking, but save yourself the headache and keep that question out of your portfolio.
Is there a good icebreaker? Is there a really good icebreaker to do with a lot of people? Because again, if I'm walking in there, I'm looking for a car, I'm not feeling good, I just want to get and meet somebody and kind of get into the process. Is there a good icebreaker to make it feel as if that I'm not just walking into a sales guy trying to make money and somebody that may at least give off the effect that they care?
You know, I always looked at what was going on around me. If it was nice weather or something like that, I'd start off just by reiterating how nice the weather was. You'll find when you're doing sales, the best thing for you to do is keep the customer saying positive responses and saying yes. So you bring up something positive like the fact of how nice the weather is, you're going to get a yes reply back and you're starting off on the right foot.
That's not a bad observation. That's not a bad way to go. I've seen a lot of people be aggressive too, right off the bat. What's the right balance when it comes to, you go from A, how's the weather, and B, let's buy you a car. What else can you do to walk somebody through that? What's the next kind of tunnel to go through?
So the second step is fact find and qualify. And this is where that topic kind of gets covered. So at the end of the day, we're there to help the customer make a good decision. And I tell all my guys as I'm training them, you're there to make a friend. So don't come off as abrasive. Come off as, just like you would in the old days when we were trying to make friends in high school. Walk up, shake hands, start, shooting the crap with somebody and go from there.
I like it. So fact finding and qualifications and that kind of stuff is another thing we do. How do we go from getting in it straight there? So far, let's say somebody goes, "I'm not really sure what I want to do. I'm not really sure what I want to look at." Even before then, they're still kind of fending you off a little bit. Is there some more kind of techniques to get a little bit more to break down the wall?
So the big thing really is just to, ultimately, if they came to the dealership, there's a reason, there's a goal in mind. When you're doing your meet and greet, if you can make it a point to be by the car, the closer you are to their car, it's going to help you out with those next steps because ultimately they're usually replacing the vehicle they came in on. So if you're out there, you could start just having open conversations about their vehicle, their likes and dislikes, what features they have that they definitely want to keep, what features their vehicle didn't have that they'd like for the next one to have. And those are your easy ways of kind of breaking the ice and getting them more comfortable having that conversation and moving forward with you.
Then you get to that side where you have to talk about money, and then it gets a little more real. Budget questions. It can be a little awkward. How do we smooth that one out?
The easiest way to do it is once again, you're asking questions about their car. Most people are pretty open to letting you know if they have a payoff, a general idea what their current payment is. Instead of focusing up front as to what it is that the next car is going to be, talk more about their vehicle because that's something they're comfortable with and take those mental notes. If a customer's in a certain dollar amount for a payment right now, assume that they're probably going to want to be somewhat close to that. And then as you start looking at vehicles, you could get more in depth as to where we need to be on the payments.
All right. So, how do you know at what point you've gathered enough information to go off of?
So typically, I ask as many questions as I could to help me get a good idea as to which vehicles I should be showing them. A good key is to help yourself eliminate it down to a handful of cars. 2 to 3 is a good preference. I like doing this out on the lot because the next step, as you're going out and you're showing them vehicle selection, it's always better to be able to do that step on the lot in front of live inventory instead of trying to sell them a car over a computer screen. So once you asked enough questions that you feel confident that you have a good idea of what vehicles you have to offer them, start walking the lot towards those cars. And oddly enough, the funny thing is, as you're going that way, you'll see that sometimes a customer will drift and end up finding something that catches their eye before you even get to where you are going.
That is the fun part when you start to go vehicle selection. I know I've gone to myself where I've gone to look for vehicles. They've tried to, the salesman usually tries to sway me into something else. Let's get you over here. Is there something to that? Is there a car that, that you want to get people in, or are you just trying to match up what they're looking for?
Sometimes there might be a special car that's worth showing a little extra, but in the end, the biggest thing is trying to get to the car that the customer really wants. As I'm walking, I usually have a pretty good general idea of what model they're looking for. And I usually start by walking them towards the new vehicles. I always let them see that first and keep in mind any other options that could be available along the way. But yeah, no, for the most part, there's no unicorn. It's very rare that.
When you start walking them into the lot and you start kind of going through that kind of stuff, what's the conversation you're having with them? And what's that kind of the process of, are you really trying to narrow it down to one or two cars, or are you just trying to say, let's look at this car?
You're still trying to narrow it down to a few cars because ultimately you want to have some options. The quicker that you push them to only one vehicle, the harder it is because let's say they don't like that one vehicle that you just put all that effort in. Now you're kind of reversing yourself through the funnel. So typically I get the answers I need about the vehicle, and as we're getting ready to walk the lot, I start asking more questions as to family orientation. Like I said, it's all about building the relationships and making a friend. So you start to find out more what that vehicle is going to be used for. Maybe it's a family that has a kid that's heavily in sports, or maybe they do camping or a good amount of traveling. So you're going to have that first option. You're going to show them that you feel 100% fits their niche. But in the back of your mind, you got an idea of the next 2 or 3 vehicles that maybe they're a little cheaper, or maybe they're a little more expensive, or not exactly what they said, that they were looking for, but still going to be beneficial options if that first one don't work out.
What if what they're asking to kind of get, but their budgets don't exactly align?
So that conversation always ends up having to take place. But at this point, while you're still out there looking at vehicles, unless if you got someone that should be in a budget around 40 grand looking at a $70,000 vehicle, you're going to kind of let this play out and see where it lands. Because at this point, we don't have all the facts. Most customers are going to be trading in their vehicle, so you don't know what you're going to be looking at for a trade-in. You're still mentally trying to view what it is that their finance credentials look like. So there's still too many pieces to the puzzle missing to make a decision too harsh as to where their budget's going to lie.
And what if they ask to see something completely different than you're recommending?
You'd be amazed how many times that happens. I don't know if the statistics changed much, but it used to be that almost 80% of customers purchase a vehicle different than what they originally came in on. And, it's just because you could do so much research online and you could do so much reading up on vehicles, but ultimately, until you see, touch, feel them, it's hard to make a decision. One of the funniest stories I ever had, I had a lady come in. She did all this research online and she was looking at something comparable to a Chevy Trax, which is a small vehicle. She gets in, looks at the tracks, and says, "Yep, there's no way this is going to work. I have a 6 foot tall kid." So she did all this research. She spent hours. She had the vehicle selected before she came in. She ended up leaving in a Traverse.
All right, so we move on to step number 4, the vehicle demonstration itself. They've
Yes.
selected a vehicle, they want to learn more about it. What happens during that vehicle demonstration?
So the vehicle demonstration is when you take your focus off of the customer a little bit and make the car the star. Ultimately, you want to point out all the key features. You don't want to overwhelm a customer with too many options, but make sure you keep in mind the things that they brought up. If safety was important to them, make sure you're pointing out all the safety features. I typically start my walk arounds right in the front of the vehicle and I work my way around the passenger side. And the reason why I do that is because ultimately we're going to end at the driver's door and we could get the customer in the vehicle to go over all the stuff that's, on the dash and in the cockpit area. And it makes it a lot easier for that next step, which will be a test drive.
All right, so you do that, and then all of a sudden they are in the car. Let me ask you this question. A lot of times I've test driven cars, and the air conditioning or the heat is on full blast. Is there an actual method to that madness, or are they just trying to show just how powerful it is to use that kind of feature?
You were just the unlucky one that went in after someone who was cold, I guess. There's, there is a bit of a method to it. Let's face it. No matter what kind of car you get, whether it's brand new, pre-owned, there's always going to be a little bit of a road noise. So a good rule of thumb is you're going to have the air conditioning or the radio on at least at a level where the customer is going to be comfortable because ultimately, I don't know about you, but I never drive my car without the heat, the AC, or the radio on. Something's always on. So usually what I'll do is everything's on to a low level. I let the customer pick the radio stations, make sure that they're comfortable with, the way the mirrors are set up and everything else. And we do all that and the customer sets all that up.
All right, so now we're in the test drive. It seems to be pretty straightforward, but I'm guessing there's a little more to it. There's some other nuggets you would like to implement during this test drive, so we're not just doing a joyride.
Oh yeah. So the biggest thing really is just giving the customer the option to get that feel of the road but number one step, make sure you always go with on the test drive. I've been doing this a long time and as guys are in the industry longer, they feel like there's no need for them to be on the ride and they hand the keys off to the customer and wait for them to return. I'm going to tell you that more than 70% of the buying decision is going to be made during that test drive. And
Hmm.
sometimes decisions are made based off of just the ignorance and not knowing how a certain option worked. And if you're not with them, you can't overcome that obstacle
Wait,
because
wait, 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 wait. There's a way to test drive and not have the sales guy in the car?
you'd be amazed how many dealers and individuals will let you do that. And it
I did not
shouldn't
know.
be.
I did not think you'd want to leave anybody alone, especially here are the keys. Come back when you get your fill.
No. Yeah, you'd be amazed for them. It's a bad habit in the industry. Like I said, I believe 100% of the time you should be with. The only exception to something like that is, at a Chevy store, you got to worry about performance cars. So you have a Corvette and you have a married couple that wants to go out on the ride by themselves. You're usually going to let that go because there's not a third seat for everybody to go together anyway.
God.
But,
Oh my God. All right.
but
So rule of thumb out there, if you're trying to sell a car, anything you can in your control, do not let them take off without you.
yeah. Uh, The good part about it is it's kind of hard to do because most dealers are required to put a plate on the back of the car. So you're going to have steps along the way. You're going to get copies of license. So your greeting back into the car is going to be pretty easy to get. As you're out on that ride, there's a lot of important things you want to do. The options that we talked about that we knew that the customer was really excited about, make sure that they try those features and options while they're out on the road. and get them comfortable and acclimated with the car. And do what you can to be asking questions that are going to get you a positive answer there as well. If they mention about the sunroof, make sure the sunroof's open and ask them how much they enjoy the breeze coming in. It feels good, right? And get yes, yes, yes. Ultimately, you're just building that excitement on the time while you're gone.
All right. So you've done the test drive. Is there a certain mark at which you're starting to do the sales side? Is there a certain time which you're, all right, we see that one tree. Now is the time we got to kind of bring their focus back to getting back in the chair and work at some numbers.
Yeah, so my rule of thumb was always between 60 and 70% of where you were at the test drive. Around that point, you're going to start asking qualifying questions. Good way to do it is to start, like I said, ask those questions, getting those yes answers, and then start up by saying, we're going to be coming back to the dealership lot. When we get back, pull that vehicle into our sold parking spots. The reason why you want to do this is to get a good gauge as to where the customer's at. If he nods his head and agrees, you know you're heading in the right direction. And usually the next step is going to be asking if they considered how they want to title the vehicle. You know, is it going to be in your name, yours and a spouse, a business? If you're getting those positive answers and you're getting replies to those questions, you know that the customer is ready to move forward. The nice thing is if you do get a roadblock or they say, wait a second, I'm not ready to agree to selling to buying this. I'm not parking it in the sold spot. Now you know that there's an obstacle here. So what's the obstacle? Did they not like the car? Or are they just, waiting for relevancy as to why they should move forward on it?
Okay, so you got somebody, they're in it, they're answering all the questions correctly. We now go to step number 6, the trial close. Give us that one.
So those are the questions that we just talked about. If you get yes answers to those, what you're going to do is when you get back to the dealership, as we talked about earlier, majority of customers are going to have a trade, and 9 times out of 10, the vehicle they're trading in is the vehicle that they drove in with. So if I'm getting those positive responses from them few questions, the next thing we're going to do is lead the customer towards helping us out with getting the information we need off of their vehicle. Simple things that you're always going to need is the VIN number and the current miles. So a good rule of thumb is have the customer get those for you. Nothing's better than a customer saying, oh, sure, I got the VIN number for you. And they open their glove box and pull the title out. Well, now you know the customer really came in ready to buy a car today. The other nice benefit to keeping the customer involved is you're always going to have the battle of a trade-in. And that trade, in the customer's mind, that car is perfect. If you have the customer out there involved with you, as you're doing like a visual of their vehicle, you have them with you. So those little scratches, nicks, the cracked tail light, things that they forgot all about, you're bringing back to their attention. Not in an abrasive manner or pointing it out, but you're doing your inspection, feeling tire tread and stuff like that. And you'd be amazed how many times the stories come out to go with the things that you saw. And, you know,
Oh,
so.
that was the time I sideswiped a tree while I was drinking. Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah. Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah, or the rogue shopping cart that took out my tail light. But the good thing is you're helping yourself along the way because the customer comes in with a mindset as to what their vehicle's worth, and you're helping them to appreciate that value as you're out there just literally letting the customer tell you about their car. So that's your next steps with the trial close. Get those questions answered. If you're heading in the right direction, focus on the trade, and then you're ready to move on.
All right, so then we move on to number 7, the write up. What happens in this situation? You've already gone through what the trading value is going to be and all that kind of stuff, and where do they go from there? Now we head to things like financing options and all that kind of stuff. Take us from there for step 7.
Yeah, so the write up is where you're going to really start getting into the nitty gritty of the deal. And you always want to ask all the right questions. We want to make sure that we know where the customer works, what other incentives they may qualify for. This is where you're going to dig deep to make sure if there's a payoff, we got the exact amount, we know which lender it is. You may not be to a point of already running, credit applications or whatnot, depending on the customer's comfort level, but you want to get all those facts together. We're going to get an actual appraisal on their vehicle, get a general idea what term they're looking for, or at least their goals. Are they looking for the quickest way to pay the vehicle off, or are they looking for the lowest payment term? So that way you could draw this all up with your management staff and, have a good presentation to give them later on.
Very cool. So after we've gotten all that and it goes to that side of it, that's when people can get a little intense. That's when you start dealing with numbers and money and the negotiation stuff kind of goes through.
Oh yeah.
Navigate us through that one.
So I'll tell you the negotiation part, you're always going to hit a little bit of negotiating because it's just the nature of the beast. The better you do on those beginning steps that we just talked about, the less that you're going to have to worry about that negotiation. Because if you did the right steps and you built the trust in that relationship along the way, the customer feels that you're working at their best interest. So typically, this is where you're going to get a presentation and a proposal from the dealership. So what I'll usually do is I'll go out and I'll get that bill of sale. They call it the four square, mainly because it's four squares with a bunch of information on it. And that's going to give you all your different terms and options. And I always let the customer decide what option's going to work best for them and work it from there.
Very cool. All right. So we've gone past that. We've done some negotiation. Step number 8, closing.
Yes. So closing is just getting that actual commitment to buy. So say we went over that write up, we agreed on some numbers. Now we need the facts. Now they're going to give us a credit application so that we could get that definite approval. We're going to go over options such as extended warranties or gap insurance, things like that if they're needed, and get everything drawn up so that the customer knows from start to finish what their price is going to be and what their payment's going to be, and actual numbers instead of just estimation based on what they told us. So that's where you're going to get that close in. Everybody agrees and shakes hands, and now you're ready to move forward.
All right. So we've moved forward. We've done everything, but it's not always that simple. After we've dealt with the actual salesperson, then they then have to go back into that office and do some real numbers. Is that something you're kind of prepping those guys for? Sometimes it takes like an hour or two until that whole thing goes through where you're going back and forth to a supervisor and they're kind of chilling there. What do you do to occupy them? Because, I mean, if some people are sitting there, maybe they're looking at their phones or maybe looking to see, hey, last minute, maybe I could find a better deal somewhere else. What do you do in terms of keeping them occupied and not having them wander outside?
So here's the big thing is I see that mistake getting made a lot. And the biggest thing is to remember that ultimately you're still there to build that relationship with the customer. So once you get all the details you need for finance, a good habit is just to get everything to the finance manager so that they could, get all the necessary documents put together. Make sure the finance manager has everything he needs or she needs and all the questions answered that they need from you. But don't spend all your time sitting in finance waiting for them to get everything drawn up. You're going to go back to the customer, keep that good relationship going, keep them excited about the decision they make. And this is a great time for you to introduce them to the rest of the staff at the dealership. So maybe you did such a good job that your management staff didn't have to get involved at all yet. Introduce them to your sales manager. If the general manager's around, just walk them over and have them shake their hand. I always make sure, especially if you're at a franchise store that has a service and a parts department, make sure to walk them through those areas. Customers only buy a car once every few years, sometimes once every 10 years, but they're going to service that car quite a bit while they have it. So while we're waiting on finance to do their thing, show them where they'd pull their car in, introduce them to a couple of the service writers, a service manager, and be sure to walk them over to a parts department. Many dealerships sell accessories. If they're a franchise dealership, they definitely do. More than 40% of customers accessorize their vehicles, but less than 10% of those do it at a dealership. And many of the reasons why is because nobody ever educated them to the fact that the dealership sells accessories. So introduce them to all those areas so they feel comfortable and at home, not only today, but when they come back.
Very cool. So everything is locked and loaded. We're on to step number 9. You've introduced them to everybody. You've seen the where do they fix your car. You've met some GMs. You've already gone through the entire, all the warranties and all that good stuff. Now it's time for step number 9, delivery. Walk
Yes.
us through it.
So they're going to finalize all their paperwork with finance, which the numbers are usually going to be comparable to what we were showing them. And once they're done with that paperwork, you take them outside, you do your final run through of the vehicle. If it's a vehicle that has additional options that need to be set up, like OnStar or anything like that, you're going to get that all done for them. And above and beyond all that, I always make this the point to ask for referrals. You're never going to have a better time because you know they had a great experience with you. So just ask, if you had to pick, who would you say the next three people are that are going to be looking for a vehicle? Awesome. Could you let them know that I'm going to be calling them to just introduce myself and let them know I'm here when they're ready? And I always finish up every delivery by getting a picture with my customer and their vehicle. It's ideal if you could be in there with them because it helps brand you and the dealership as well. But very rarely does a customer say no to that. And if you take advantage of doing that all the time, you could post it on your social media, the dealer's social media, let the customer know it's there and share it with them. And you'll be amazed how quickly you build up your referral base just by doing things like that that are free.
All right. Those are your 9 steps to selling a car if you're going to go out there and start selling cars and make it a full-time living or just a good side hustle. This has been incredibly insightful, Mr. Dan. We appreciate it. Any final thoughts for the listeners, viewers that might be in automotive sales or management?
I'm just going to tell you that this is one of many videos that you're going to see from our way. And if you look for more information, you could see it on my app, A Little Training. You could look that up on Android or Apple, and there's always new training courses coming up, so I'm happy to help and guide you guys along the way.
And for the listeners who might be shopping for a car soon.
So my app's got a part for you as well. Feel free to call me up also with any questions. You could reach me anytime at 708-969-2799.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise today with us, Dan, and to our listeners. Thanks for tuning in to a little sales training. We hope you tune in for our next episode, Where Can I Find Customers? Until then, my name is Dan Levy. He is Dan Little Jr. This has been the 9 Steps for Success. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us. We will see you on the next episode. Drive safely.